Ahoy and welcome, this is Admiral.
Wololo.
In a rare opportunity to cover new information on equal footing with early access creators, presumably, I'll be breezing through this fresh off the press announcement of an update to go live tomorrow. Be aware this is not the anticipated fourth quarter DLC, which there is still reason to believe is coming later this year, but it's a medium-sized update with some interesting implications we'll go over, including some that coincide with video topics I've covered already. I've put the link in the description if you want to check it out on your own, and let's get right into it. I'm just going to skim through the bug fixes here. It mentions fixes for black screens, custom scenario freezes, and an unusual type of crash, some low-impact UI changes, and the first standout we find out is that they've added the option to pick a random civilization from a chosen civ pool, which pool is populated by the user by starring civilizations. For example, if I wanted to play as a random American civilization, I would star Aztecs, Mayas, and Incas, and use the new custom civilization selection option, which would then pick one of those three randomly. I remember having seen this multiple times as a player request, so this is good news for that crowd. Moving on, there's a hotkey and Xbox change that I'll just display here for those whom it may concern. Under the general changes heading are several quality of life improvements, such as deer being less distracted by single obstacles, the option to use waypoints in combination with building gather points, allowing you to create a more complex route for newly created units. And the assisted farm placement mechanic that was added a while back now interacts properly with unbuilt town center foundations. Kings have been nerfed in this update as they're no longer able to attempt attacking enemies, and 1 HP Mongol Scout Cavalry with Bloodlines have been buffed by not instantly dying on reaching Castle Age. The next section is fairly large and almost entirely has to do with changes for Victors and Vanquished. Not surprising, as this was the most recent DLC and the lowest value added DLC for its price, so while it would have been nice to have more of that value up front, better late than never. And for those who enjoyed the DLC, you may appreciate these updates. There's a variety of changes, but some common themes are making the missions less punishing by providing more resources and units to the player, especially on standard or moderate difficulties, improving hero units, fixing bugs that made the missions unintentionally difficult, and clarifying objectives. Although in some cases, through AI improvements or other buffs, the enemy players have been strengthened as well. Some of the maps have been updated with more resources or cosmetic improvements. It remains to be seen what the cumulative impact of all these changes is, and would take a playthrough or two to find out, but the gist of the update, if as advertised, seems to be to provide more reasonably scaling difficulties and deliver some more of the polish that was originally promised for these scenarios. And they finally changed the Byzantines in Vortigern to the Romans. Up next is the most interesting section of general balance changes. Good news for elephant fans, as both battle and war elephants are getting a bit of conversion resistance from their baseline of 0, along with the majority of other units, to 2.5 in-game seconds added to their minimum and maximum conversion times. So you'll have a little more time to act or react with your elephants once you start hearing that
Wololo.
The pendulum of Archer line upgrade costs has also swung slightly back in the other direction after the significant cost increase of a previous patch, slightly incentivizing that unit line. Rams and the ram-like armored elephant have received more bonus damage in a nice follow-up to an earlier update where they received greater garrison capacity and a more convenient garrisoning feature. Next up, and probably the most interesting so far, is that all civilizations have become Romanized in the sense of having the ballistics technology affect their Scorpion line. Fairly early on in this channel's history, I did a video on the somewhat common proposal at the time of giving Scorpions attack ground, and why it would be extremely underwhelming without additional synergistic buffs. And ballistic bolts was one of the more effective alternatives that I and that others have proposed. So it's interesting to see it implemented, and fans of Scorpions should have a lot of fun with them, regardless of civilization, after the upcoming buff. Palisade gates get a bit more pierce armor, and trade units get a bit of a buff as well. This one is pretty interesting because I did a whole video on how much more effective trade units with smaller collision boxes would be, which can be pretty significant in combating the inefficiency of a crowded trade route. The upcoming change isn't exactly the same, as it's a change to the collision size multiplier and not a baseline collision size change, so it may have a somewhat smaller effect. But it might be interesting to see how this compares to my earlier tests, if Spirit of the Law doesn't beat me to it. There's also a change to market exchange rates exclusively for food, and in an obvious nerf to the Phosphorus type strategies and in buying your way to Castle Age. Aztecs get a little boost, and while it's not a Jaguar warrior buff, it's more effective and satisfying number for their increased military production rate at 15%. In my opinion, an overdue partial reverse of an overzealous nerf from the past. Both Bohemians and Portuguese got a unique unit training time increase in another Phosphorus nerf. And Byzantine fireships and Dromans got a small reduction in attack rate, which seems a little odd, but it's small enough not to break anything. And I do have an older, if intentionally one-sided video on how powerful those units can be with Greek fire, from back when that was a hot topic. Moving right along, we have a minor Chinese team bonus tweak and an increase in the base range of the Therisidae from 6 to 7, to further incentivize creation of that Imperial exclusive ship, and further cement the part of the Dravidian identity that is a water powerhouse boat. Manaspas are finally and appropriately nerfed with 5 to 10 less hit points for their regular and elite forms respectively. Hun horses have slowed down a little on Nomad, and Ballista elephants take after Scorpions by having their bolts ballisticized as well. For Koreans, the elite turtle ship upgrade is now cheaper, and the base speed of turtle ships has increased yet again, now putting them just a hair behind cannon galleons. You'll notice that this is the third naval change after the Byzantine and Dravidian ship changes, so my conspiratorial side wants to suggest this is related to a significant water element in the upcoming DLC, but it's more likely just coincidental or an unrelated interest in further balancing and differentiating water civilizations. The strangest change, in my opinion, is a new bonus for Poles, who now have bloodlines and their scout line upgrades cost 50% less food. While Poles do have some open map weakness from their exposed folwarks, they weren't exactly bottom 5. And it does seem a little odd to me to have this kind of bonus on a civilization that already gets a special scout line upgrade and a technology for blast damage on scouts. Be that as it may, Poles fans will surely enjoy this as long as it lasts, and we'll see what kind of impact it has on their win rates. So those are most of the changes of note, including some alleged pathfinding fixes and other miscellaneous changes. In summary, a lot of changes to Victors and Vanquished scenarios, a nerf to Phosphorus imitators of the world, an interesting Poles buff, and some naval unit change. And finally, a victory for animal lovers everywhere, as elephants, turtles, and scorpions will all be improved by the upcoming patch. I personally find the scorpion and trade changes most interesting, but what's your favorite change or update from the patch? Look forward to hearing your comments. That's all for today, and thanks for watching. This has been me underlining upcoming updates, understandably underwhelming, but not unappreciated. Till next time.